So Where Winds Meet just got its first major expansion, and it brings with it a new mystic skill that pretty much all damage dealers should be using right now. It's pretty powerful. It's the Flute of the Tides. So in this video I want to go through how you can exactly obtain it. I did run into some issues, so maybe this will help you avoid them. And I also want to compare it versus all the other main tier 5 mystic skills here. This is moving on from the previous tests I did with the tier 4 mystic skills. And so we can ultimately see how good is this new skill really. So first things first, you're going to have to unlock this second map. You will simply do so by unlocking it through the main story. Once you are here, zoom in on this part of the map where my mouse is. You will have this teleportation stone and the NPC right above it. He's just playing his flute here, and you go up to him and you talk to him. Now this is where you may run into a bug like I had. He was not giving me the proper quest. He was not giving me any quests, despite playing this solo song many times. What I needed to do was go to my journal and clear all of my encounter quests, simply give them up. And then the next time I spoke to him and I successfully played the solo performance here, he finally gives you some new dialogue and gives you that quest to head to this second location to also play a song there. Don't overthink playing this music. You can spam all 6 of the buttons non-stop and you will succeed this. Once you play it in this location, you need to go to the next. It may not show it to you unless you're actually tracking the quest, and that's under exploration here, Flutes of the Tides. And now it properly shows where I need to go for the next place. You just interact with the ground there, play the music, spam out your notes, and you're done. You've completed the melodic essence, and you just need to head back to the monk. Speaking to him, you will now successfully unlock the new damage mystic skill. Now it is labeled as an area damage mystic skill, but it is literally one of the best for single target boss fights. All we need to do now is actually get the thing upgraded. Now you may not have enough of this new mystic skill currency because it only comes from newly purchased, newly obtained choice packs. I still had some I needed to buy from the season shop with the jade coins, so that gave me them. I still needed to buy some from the battle pass, and so that gave me some more. But any of the ones you previously had will not give you the option to claim this currency. So I quickly ran out when trying to get to the last levels. So we needed to farm some. You can of course just wait until Monday reset or Sunday reset and you'll be able to buy the packs and get more of this without having to farm any of it. But if you check here, there's a bunch of packs you can obtain by collecting all these herbs, but unfortunately they also do not drop any of the new currency for the mystic skill. So what I had to resort to was gathering the herbs. You can simply track their location and go collect them. However, there is a bit of a bug you can abuse with these certain type of monsters. Not the ones that walk around like this, which are pretty squishy, but the ones that spawn out of the ground, which will happen as soon as I killed this guy, the skeleton bloom. These guys have an ability which can respawn those flowers, allowing you to get a chance to get more of that currency needed to upgrade the mystic skill. Now thanks to Winds for pointing this out, but you can actually use the build mode to trap the guy within these pavilions. Very easy to craft here using some timber. You'll go to your inventory, click craft here, go to construction, and you can make like 2 or 3 of them. Then when you press by default F4, you enter build mode. You can also have a free roam camera with this. You can open your bag with B and you can double click the pavilion and you can place it down. And if you place it down on top of the spawn location of a steel blue monster, they get trapped inside like this. Sometimes they do break free though. You then want to damage them a bit, about to 50%. Don't remove that auto lock that you're given as soon as he spawns, just so that you can still target him. So we damage him a bit here, and this is when he'll start using the ability where he'll respawn those flowers. That's it right here. So we just go and we grab these flowers and get the last of our materials needed to get this new Flute Mystic skill to tier 5. And then of course using the iron ore to get the remaining levels. Just have to do some outposts if you miss some. So with it on max level, along with a bunch of other ones, we can compare its damage output and find out, is this thing actually worth using? It does have a pretty hefty 50 vitality cost, but it sure looks like it can rack up a decent amount of damage, especially when this straight up gives it 100% damage boost, and then this here another 20% damage boost if you can play at 10 meters away. So we can use that data combined with the data of all the other mystic skills here, them being on tier 5 with their damage upgrades. Leaping Toad doesn't get anything special on tier 5 other than being able to ignite the venom immediately, so if you were to use this back to back, or have somebody else already using it. However, Dragon's Breath gets a decent buff. If you use the full cast, it gets an additional hit, along with adding ignition stacks per hit, which means you get another 5 hits of the damage over time here. Instead of 16, you get 21. And then Drunken's Poet, the final hit, can get boosted by 80% damage. So with all that in mind, we jump to the training room and we test out each and every one of the main damage mystic skills. Find out how effective are they really. You can see the breakdown on this Google Sheet here. I'll leave a link in the video description below. Just keep in mind again, we are accounting for the double damage bonus on Flutes of Tide after you get it upgraded as shown here, along with the up to 20% boost if you're at 10 meters. This effect may change. If you're a melee damage dealer, still want to use this ability, you may not get that 20% at all. You could just remove it here from the sheet and then look at the damage values in comparison to more accurately represent how effective this would be for your setup. But if I'm going with the Everspring Umbrella and the Unfettered Rope, you can technically play for quite a bit of time at that 10 meters and thus making the most damage out of this mystic skill. You also won't be casting it that often with 50 vitality cost and a 25-second cooldown, but when you look at the cast time of this thing and you compare it versus the amount of effective damage it could deal, it actually has a pretty great DPS score. This means average damage per second. You only need to spend about 1.5 seconds casting this thing before you get that first hit, and then you can animation cancel the rest of the animation and immediately go and do something else. You can actually animation cancel it a bit sooner, but you will miss out on the damage of that first hit, and I don't really think that's worth it. You can see right here, it's still going to give us the 5 damage hits even though we didn't get the initial hit, and we probably spent less than a second casting this thing. So it has some pretty good DPS. I just don't think it's really worth cancelling that first hit. But if you wanted to in the sheet here, you would remove that first hit and you'd reduce the cast time to about 1 second, maybe a little bit less. You could time it, and the DPS ultimately goes up to nearly 9,000 there. The only thing comparable to this is if you use Dragon's Breath when you're already intoxicated. That is super fast and then you get all that damage over time. But in order to be intoxicated, you have to spend extra time casting. But if you are to cast it by, say, just parrying, only getting the first hit, the DPS is like only over 4,000 here. Quite a good bit far behind the Flutes of Tide. Nothing really beats it other than Dragon's Breath while intoxicated, which again, like we said, is not always going to be possible. But we'll put back that first hit and we still have a very high DPS score of over 7,000. This makes Flutes of Tide pretty much the best and most reliable for fast damage output. Just being able to have that damage over time while being able to cast all your other abilities is absolutely huge here. It is definitely a mystic skill that everybody should have. Of course, that's not to say you can't make the other mystic skills work. Still, using Soaring Spin is going to be a staple in everybody's build just because it's super efficient in terms of vitality. All this extra damage just for 15 vitality cost. This gap closure can also be super good on a lot of builds. Along with the effect, it gives you the ability to automatically dodge damage while casting it. Crazy how often that is so useful. The combination of Drunken Poet and Dragon's Breath somewhat more viable now, particularly with the fact Drunken Poet gets that 80% extra damage boost on the final hit, and Dragon's Breath gets a third damage hit if you were to do the full cast. The amount of damage the combo can deal is pretty huge, but in terms of vitality, it's really not efficient, and even the DPS is not the best. Particularly because you have to spend over 5.5 seconds actually casting this thing, so it doesn't exactly fit into a lot of rotations. The only catch on the Flute of Tides is the vitality efficiency is not as high as some other options. Soaring Spin, Leaping Toad are just better in terms of vitality efficiency, so it may depend on what build you're running, what rotation you're using. You might have an extra bit of downtime, some more cast time, and then you may not necessarily go for abilities that just need high DPS, rather having extra damage with vitality efficiency. But ultimately, if you don't want to think too hard about it and just want to have high damage output, making use of your vitality, this new Flute Mystic skill is super easy to play with, automatic damage, and even if you have more than one target, the value is insane. Because this thing gonna hit up to 5 targets around you, all with that damage. It's pretty much a no-brainer ability, everybody should have it. I would follow that up with Soaring Spin, also an ability everybody should have on their kit, along with Cloud Steps as a great gap closer if needed. But ultimately, I hope this helps you decide on which mystic skills you should be using and highlights the sheer impact of this new Flute Mystic skill. Don't miss out on getting it, it is super useful, especially when fighting bosses with more than one target. Crazy value then. Overall, its DPS is really high, not the best at vitality efficiency, but even so, in most cases, everybody should have it, and most of you should be using it. Again, this is for PvE boss fights. So with that said, thanks all for watching, and we'll see you guys around.